Hello again. I am narrating Satan's Trilogy. I am the author, and I am reading Book 1, Chapter 4. This will be reading 31. Turning to Mr. Mason, Miss Lee said, "I'll have to excuse myself unless you need me further. I still have much to do." "Of course, Miss Lee. Thank you for coming in." Mr. Mason turned to Esther. "Well then, Esther, it seems that your course choices are perfect. You could probably attend any university of your choosing. Do you know what you'd like to do after graduation?" "My father and I traveled to many countries, and I was privileged to enjoy many fine cuisines. I plan to be a chef. I understand that Chicago has one of the country's best culinary schools. I have already made application to attend." Esther's eyes pricked up just a bit as she spoke about her plans. Mr. Mason could hear the passion in her voice. "That's fantastic, Esther. I look forward to enjoying a meal prepared by you." Putting his hand out to shake hers, Mr. Mason added, "One day soon, I hope." As he finished talking, he opened the office door and asked Esther to wait at the counter for a moment. He turned to Miss Lee. "Miss Lee, please have Esther sign her registration papers and give her a student badge." Handing a folder to Miss Lee, he turned to Esther. "Have a great day, Esther, and welcome to Grant High." Mr. Mason went back into his office and closed the door. Miss Lee quickly took Esther's photo and made a school badge for her, then pulled out a few documents from the folder Mr. Mason had handed her. "Esther, you'll need to read this and sign at the bottom." Miss Lee gave Esther her class schedule and then a key to her locker. All seniors are given a locker on the first floor. They are wider than most and will hold just about anything, including a motorcycle helmet. Miss Lee made the comment because Esther was holding her helmet. "We have many good students here, Esther, but you will probably want to avoid some. Out of 1,800 students, there will be some difficult students." Miss Lee looked at Esther and gave her a genuine smile. "I think you are going to love Grant High. If you ever need to talk to someone, I'd be glad to listen." Esther was pleased to hear the offer and felt that perhaps Miss Lee needed someone to talk to more than she did, and so made a mental note to make time for Miss Lee in the near future. It was easy to feel a slight bond with anyone from China. Had Esther not traveled to so many countries in her life, she might be missing Hong Kong more than she did, but Esther was used to being away from her home. Having studied the school maps offered on the internet, Esther knew exactly where she had to go for each of her classes, but until now, she had no idea where her locker would be. The lockers were sequential, starting with number 1, and they all had 6 digits. Esther's locker number was 3 zeros, followed by 4, 1, and 1. Having left the office and continuing down the corridor, Esther quickly found her locker. The hallway was wide and full of students rushing about. Not too far away were several girls wearing completely black, and they had dyed their hair black with some blue streams of color and wore a lot of black eyeshadow. The school had a strict dress code, but it did not ban individuality. Clothing simply could not be revealing, nor could students wear any signs of gang activity. Putting her helmet away, along with her jacket, Esther held on to her backpack to carry her books as she collected them. As she turned around, the 3 Gothic girls were laughing. It didn't matter to Esther if the object of their amusement was her or someone else. She had learned from early childhood that everyone is different, and some people find that difference amusing. Esther, Esther, I am so glad that I found you. Day came up to Esther quickly and gave her a hug and then a kiss on her cheek. They were nearly the same height. Day was tall for a Korean. I just wanted to wish you a wonderful day. Come over here with me. I want you to meet my friends. Grabbing Esther's hand, she tugged on Esther to walk with her to the three Gothic girls. They all stood motionless and in a daze. Esther, this is Eve, this is Helen, and this is Chris, my best friends. We've been together for 12 years now. This is our last semester. I'm glad you're here to share it with us. All three girls looked at Esther, then looked at Day. Their lifelong bond was strong, and each girl turned back to Esther as they continued to talk. Esther is my sister. I have her back on everything. Day was smiling as she looked at Esther. All three girls looked at Day and realized that her announcement was final. Turning away from having witnessed Day's revelation, Eve smiled while studying Day's new sister. Esther, if Day says you're her sister, then that's good enough for me. Eve looked at the other two. Doesn't this group need a little color anyway? Eve laughed and hugged Esther, then gave her a kiss on her cheek. Helen looked puzzled. Realizing that the decision was made, she decided to speak up. You might feel a little strange in this group, but you'll get used to it. Helen smiled and stepped forward just a bit to hug Esther, then gave her a kiss on both cheeks. I'm French. If I kiss one cheek, I'll have to kiss the other. She laughed. They all laughed, and Chris spoke up. Let me think. You make number 5 in our group. We'll have to call you the odd one. Now the girls all laughed. It was a spontaneous moment, handled rather easily, and would be memorable for years to come. They all continued to laugh together for a few seconds, realizing that a bond had just developed. Chris moved to Esther and gave her a hug, then kissed her cheek. Esther, I love Day. How could I not love her sister? Smiling, she stepped back just a bit. So our first class is on the 3rd floor. Where are you headed, Esther? Asked Steve. 3rd floor. 321, Esther responded. Well, what do you know? We're all a bunch of freaking math wizards, commented Helen. It seems all 4 are taking advanced calculus. Let's get going. I hate climbing the stairs. Chris started walking, and all 5 made their way to the stairwell and started climbing the steps. As they approached the 3rd floor, they could see a crowd of students had formed. It wasn't easy to push their way into the hallway, but as they did, each witnessed the crowd watching a senior trying to intimidate a male student. Behind him were 2 of his friends, rather tall and muscular classmates. The senior in front yelled at the other student, I don't care for gay freaks, and you look to me about as gay as they come. He put his face as close as he could while yelling at him. Tomorrow you had better dress like a straight person, or I'll have to rip your ugly clothes off of you. Do you understand me? He looked the student square in the eyes. Chris got a glimpse of the bullied student and immediately realized that it was her friend Chris York. Esther didn't like bullies, and she didn't care at all for people that bothered others about their manner of dress. Walking forward, Esther tapped on the shoulder of the 2 students standing behind the bully. As they turned, Esther grabbed them in the throat and walked them backwards and away from their friend. They couldn't speak, they couldn't yell, they couldn't even fight. The air in their throats was controlled by Esther as she spoke softly to them. The both of you are going to stand back here and watch your friends stand alone. Do you understand me? Esther looked at each as they choked for air. Each nodded yes. Chris was amazed that the 3 students had been reduced to 1, and so easily by only 1 girl that he had sold shoes to. Realizing that the odds were now even, Chris spoke up. You need to grow up, man. Don't worry about me or anyone else. Just live your own life and accept others as they are." Sensing that something had changed, the ugly senior glanced around and discovered he was alone. Not wanting to look weak, he decided to continue his hazing of Chris. Taking his index finger, he poked Chris in the chest. "You'll listen to my advice or else." Chris, in one smooth movement, took the finger poking on his chest and grabbed it. Pulling the finger backwards and in a downward movement, the bully went to his knees, whining in pain. Chris, now realizing he had the upper hand, again spoke to the student. "I'll repeat myself for you. Accept others as they are and live your life as you choose." Chris was confident, looking confident. "It's not that difficult. Just remove hate and ignorance from your mind and focus on your own life. You can accept that." Chris pulled down on the student's finger. He winced in pain and quickly agreed. Chris lowered his head down and in front of the student. Then he had an agreement. "Then we have an agreement?" "Yes, I agree." The student rubbed his fingers as Chris let go and quickly walked away. Esther walked up and greeted Chris with a large smile. "Good morning, Chris. How's my favorite salesman today?" Esther walked up and hugged him, then stepped back just a little. "You know, Esther, some days are better than others, and this day had started out wonderful. It is just fantastic to see you, and you handled those two so easily. I'm impressed." Chris was looking at Esther with amazement and genuine admiration. "Well, Chris, it seems that you are able to handle yourself well enough," Esther said with some admiration. Chris laughed just a little and said, "My mom told me a long time ago that if I was going to be different, then I should learn to protect myself. So she enrolled me into a self-defense class. The instructor is royal. He is against violence and yet understands the need to deal with it." Chris was checking his watch. "I have to go to a math class. I'm headed to my first class. I'll try to connect with you later." Chris took off and headed down the hallway. Day stepped forward. She had been standing behind Esther and listening to her and Chris talk. "Esther, is Chris your friend?" "Yes, of course. He sold me some great shoes and then helped me find a bargain purse. Later he sold my aunt some fantastic furniture. He seems really nice." "Well then, Chris is our 6th family member." They looked at her lifelong friends. "Are we all okay with that?" He spoke up. "It's about time we had a male in our group. Chris is absolutely the best dressed guy in this school." Eve looked at the others to see if they agreed with her. Helen and Chris were both smiling and applauding in agreement. "Oh yes, we're going to have a guy in our group. Chris is so cool." Chris was excited about the fact they would have a male friend in their close-knit club. "I hope our names don't confuse anyone. There's an obvious difference in the spelling of our names, but they sound alike," Chris remarked as she looked away, studying her other students in the hallway. Day decided to thank her friends. "Hey, you guys are really awesome. You have accepted a lot of changes this morning, and that's awesome. I think we're going to be better for it. I love you all." Day looked at her friends. Each had been fine with their group growing and did not seem at all concerned. Everyone was smiling at Day. Helen spoke. "Look, Day, we're lifelong friends. That doesn't mean we're going to continue to find new friends. We think it's great that you're happy. If you're happy, we're happy. Besides, I think this is just what we all needed." Eve stepped alongside of Day and put her arm around Day's back. "You have never led us astray, and even if you did, I am going to stand by your side. It's like Helen said, we're lifelong friends, and that is a fact. I trust your judgment." Eve paused for a second, and besides, Eve looked at Esther, "this group needs a little color." They all laughed. If Esther added color, it would only come with the clothes she wore. Her complexion was very pale. They all started down the hallway to their class. having testified to their unity. All five walked into the classroom at the same time, with Day going first, then Eve, Helen, Chris, and finally Esther. Day spotted Chris sitting at the center of the classroom, and so she went over and sat alongside of him. The other four decided to surround Chris, all sitting on chairs alongside him. Esther chose to sit directly behind him. Her seat was in the back row. Not that she felt it necessary, but keeping her back to the wall offered a certain amount of added security, a practice that came natural. The bell sounded, and an old man stepped into the room. Immediately behind him was the last student. She took a seat in the far corner of the classroom. Esther immediately realized she was the girl from the mall she had briefly met after taking the security guard's weapon away, preventing a possible tragedy. Esther glanced at Day, remembering she said this girl was a friend. Day had made eye contact with her and then turned around smiling. Mr. Grade had been teaching for over 35 years and loved it. Mathematics had caught his interest at a young age, and even though he knew he did not have the intellect to master graduate level classes, it did not matter to him. He was thrilled to teach others the language of mathematics and the many possibilities it offered. Taking off his jacket and placing it onto a old-fashioned hat tray, you could see his suspenders, an item he had always worn during his teaching career. Standing in front of the class and gazing about, he momentarily focused on each student. Then, after studying the semesters in Roman, he spoke up. "Welcome back. Day, Eve, Helen, Chris, James, Steve, Robert, Wesley, Walker, and finally Chris." He had said the names in one breath and so chuckled at the fact. "Of course, I am thrilled to see two new faces in our classroom." Looking down at a roster on his clipboard, he said, "Which one of you two ladies is Raven?" The girl in the far back corner raised her hand. "My name is Raven, sir." The name seemed to fit her. She was dressed in black, shoes, socks, jeans, blouse, and even her rings were black onyx. Her long-sleeved blouse was loose-fitting, made of rayon. It went well with her black denim vest. I'm going to stop there. That ends reading 31. Hope you enjoyed it.